Oh boy, as if I hadn't already had my fill of Saints Row as of recently. Now we have Saints Row Gat Out of Hell, the standalone DLC expansion of Saints Row 4, which in and of itself was an expansion of Saints Row the Third. Well, I'm gonna try not to sound too unbalanced here, so let me start off with the positive aspects that I have to say about this DLC. So the basic premise of this DLC is that the boss character, the head of the Saints, the guy you've been playing as, that you've created and customized to your heart's desire, has been brought down to hell and captured by the devil, or Satan as he's referred to in this DLC, and in order for Satan's daughter to be married to him. And you play, in this DLC, you could either choose to play primarily as Gat or Kinzie, the nerdy girl who's in your crew throughout the past two Saints Row games. Now, the best thing I could really say about this DLC is the fact that they've created hell, a representation of hell here. They've created a new explorable world they can go around and fly around in. And I think they actually did a very good job here with the city itself. Because, especially, maybe just because of the fact that they've rehashed the Steelport throughout this game, throughout Saints Row 4, and just the fact that it's not really that great of a city to explore in and of itself back in Saints Row the Third when it was originally introduced to us. This was refreshing, I thought. I thought they actually put some effort into designing the city. That's just my opinion, but it felt like they actually cared a bit more. I mean, it's certainly not anywhere near the same level of craft as the world of Stillwater was back in Saints Row 2, but I feel as if they finally made an honest effort in creating an actual world here. That's probably the best thing I have to say about the DLC. They nailed the look of hell. There's a lot of lava and stuff, and it's just there's different looking buildings and different kind of districts that, the atmosphere kind of looks the same, but just how the districts are structured is different and varied, and just the city itself has different islands, and nothing really it doesn't resemble. It's not like a knockoff of Steelport. It's actually completely original. I mean, I could tell. I was digging around and just looking at the map extensively to see if they borrowed from there, and it doesn't seem like they did. It feels as if it's original. All the structures of the islands, or whatever you want to call it, don't seem to resemble that much of Steelport at all. So, yeah, that's the best thing I could say about the DLC. Also, the flying in this game, once you upgrade Johnny Gat all the way in his, flying thing, it works well enough. Although, I have the same problem here as I did with the sprinting on the Xbox One controller, because you're holding down LB and using that to fly around. So, at least initially, unless you basically fully upgraded the flying in this DLC, it doesn't really work very well, because, as I mentioned before in my other video, I don't really care for the LB bumper on the Xbox One controller, and the fact that the running and sprinting and, flying around is relegated to that button really put a damper on things. But once you've upgraded your flight ability, you have different flaps, as in, speed boosts or whatever, otherwise you kind of fly very slowly. Once you upgrade it, it's fine, but before that, the flying is a little bit clumsy. And just as a final positive aspect here, just the side activities and everything like that, if you've been a fan of the wackiness and zaniness of the last two Saints Row installments, you're going to be right at home here. So some of the activities are, amusing to engage in, albeit they're basically identical and just retitled with a different name as those in Saints Row 4. So don't expect anything particularly new with the activities, but if you've enjoyed the activities in Saints Row 4, the side activities and everything, you're going to enjoy them here. I'm going to start off by stating the minor problems that I had with this DLC and then build up from there. First of all, this is obviously no technical marvel, as were the last two games. And I'm not talking about the graphical quality, I'm talking about the performance. There's constant frame rate dips that I encountered on the Xbox One version of this DLC. Constant frame rate dips whenever the action and whenever there are too many NPCs on screen at one time. So I can't imagine what it would be like on the Xbox 360 version of the game. So there's that. No real humor in this DLC at all. And I'm not talking about forced humor or anything like that, but it doesn't seem to even attempt to be all that funny. I mean, there's basically, aside from this kind of like spoof on Disney sing-along movies like, Tangled, for example, you know what they do, the characters kind of burst out into song monologues. Well, that happens here, which I guess is kind of amusing, and it's amusing and it's original for Saints Row to do something like that. Aside from that, there's not really any attempt to be all that humorous here. So there's that. And just the general sense here of the amount of content being scaled back. No clothing stores to change your clothes at all. No clothing customization. No homies for you to call upon in terms of receiving backup in combat. No radio stations to listen to. Although driving around, and I don't know if you can even drive around in cars in this. And even if you could, it'd kind of be rendered useless with the flying mechanic once you've upgraded it. So there's that also. And as I mentioned before, I believe the flying mechanic can be clumsy unless you've upgraded it fully. Now, the biggest main problem with this DLC is the fact that there are really no fucking main missions. That's right, you heard me right. No real main missions. What you get in this DLC is basically you have to fill up a bar of Satan's, you have to get his attention throughout the DLC or whatever, and you have to build up this bar until it gets to the end. And that'll take, only an hour or hour and a half to do or so, and you do this by engaging in the side activities. The only, and I quote, and I'm not going to quote this as main missions, is just you acquiring your superpowers by talking to, famous dead people like Shakespeare and Blackbeard and whoever else. That's what it boils down to as main missions. It's just you, defending an area for 5 minutes to rescue them or some shit like that, and then they grant you your ability to stomp, like I'm doing in this clip right here or whatever, like Force Blast and Stomp and Telekinesis or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And there's only like 4 or 5 of those to do, and each one takes 5 minutes or so. So you're going to be done with that in about 45 minutes, or if you want to include the travel distance. So, yeah, that's basically all there is to the main story, and all that leads up to is just a final boss battle with Satan, which lasts all of maybe 5 minutes or so. And really, that basically... So, leveling up your Johnny Gat or Kinzie is rendered kind of pointless when all you're going to be needing it for is a boss battle that's, far too simplistic and easy to really care about. And that's really all this DLC is, and they're charging you $20 for it. $20. And the main quest, even if you do just the main story, it'll take you 2 hours to beat at most. I mean, in terms of like price per value or price per hour, the amount of time you're investing into this, I consider it, in terms of movies, right? Let's just say you pay $10 to see a 2-hour movie, right? That, just based on that, you would want to have a value of around $5 per hour, around there. And this, which would mean, in this case, if you're paying $20, you'd expect around 4 hours of content, at least. And unless you want to stick around for the side missions, the main content is maybe 2 hours, which is around half of what you'd get for, a decent deal out of this. I mean, seriously, unless you want to invest, I mean, it would take more than 4 hours to get like 100% completion in this, in terms of completing all the side activities and leveling up Johnny Gat fully and everything like that. But that's basically about it. And that's just terrible if they're charging you $20 for this. and that's the amount of value you're going to be getting out of it. Now that's the main problem with this DLC, is just the absurd and frankly insulting lack of content, lack of a main compelling story to this. And that's really should turn you off from buying it, unless of course, because what you're basically paying for is $20 for is just to play more side activities, which are basically the same side activities that are available for you to play in Saints Row 4. So yeah, the only way it'd be worth buying this is if you haven't played either Saints Row 3 or Saints Row 4. And I reckon if you're looking to buy this, that you already have. You know, I doubt anyone's is gonna buy this where they haven't played any other Saints Row installment prior to this. Now, before I forget about this, the fucking developers were boasting about how you finally get to fucking kill Dex. Dex. You remember him? You remember Dex from back in Saints Row, the first game, and also briefly in Saints Row 2, as in one of the expansions. Well, if you recall, he ran off. He left Stillwater in that expansion, and now he's somehow ended up in hell, which they don't explain, or as far as I can tell, they don't explain how he ended up dead. Yeah, so there's that. But basically, all it boils down to in terms of killing him is just you have to kill him 7 times. And he's just a random NPC character who hardly looks he basically looks no different from any of the other, dead zombie-looking people that are roaming around the world here. And all you do is just shoot him 7 times. And that's basically what it boils down to. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh, God. I mean, how much bigger of a middle finger can you stick out to the fans by doing something as menial and as simplistic and as just as pointless and meaningless and just as that? I honestly don't understand. So yes, speaking of older characters, just as a final mention, Dane Vogel is in this, and I guess that's, if you want to consider that a positive aspect, it was interesting to see him here. He's one of the, main characters in this DLC. So I guess that's a positive in terms of bringing back. I personally liked Dane Vogel quite a bit as a character back in Saints Row 2. And I thought his presence here was welcoming. But that whatever small, whatever, positive aspects I listed before, the unique world, I guess, that they created here where they put some effort into it, why didn't they put that same level of effort into crafting some main story missions that you could actually do in the world? What's the point of creating this world that's, albeit it's fairly small, it's not exactly big, but, that's creative looking artistically. Why would they not fill that with decent story missions, a decent real story structure, like a storyline to it? Why? So, anyway, oh yeah, here it is right here. This is the Dex thing, I believe, right here that you're seeing. Take a look at him. He looks basically no different, aside from that, like, purple bandana or whatever cloth that he has over his head. That he looks no different. So, oh, God. So, that's basically my opinion about this DLC. Should you get it? Unless, I mean, I'm sure you're already going to buy it no matter what. But, it's basically just a huge ripoff. I mean, this should be $10 at most. $10 at most. That's how much it's worth, because that's how much main, story content that it provides is $2 hours, which you should only be paying, roughly $10 for at most. So yeah, I'm really pissed off. I'm really pissed off about this, and yeah, that's all there is to it. And if there's another Saints Row game after this, I will be boycotting that for sure. Even if someone gives it to me as a gift or whatever, I will just turn it in the receipt to the store and buy something else, because I have completely lost my faith in Volition as a developer, and if they're I forget if they're the developer or the publisher, whatever. I am definitely not going to be buying the next Saints Row installment. Period. boycott these fucking developers.
Looking forward to
Peace out, guys. Take care.